I've spent my entire life in Mason. I grew up down on Main Street, just past the traffic light on the right at Mason Montgomery. My dad, he lived all his life in Mason and ran Thompson Hardware next to the house for 37 years. And his dad lived in Mason all his life and founded the Mason Lumber Yard up here on West Main Street. And he was instrumental in the early days of the First Mason Bank back here behind us.
I was born right across the street here in Church Street, up in the second floor in the front bedroom. And I always kid a real close buddy of mine, Carl Spaeth, who was born and raised here for Masons and part of the biggest Spaeth family. I always kidded him about the fact that I was born on Church Street. And he says, I was born on the kitchen table down on West Main Street. And so things were a little bit different in those days.
This was 1957 that we moved here. And we had 2.5 children when we moved here and 17 cows, milk cows, dairy cows. And so that's where we started here.
My family came here in 1945. And my dad was working here as a policeman, and then we all really moved here in 1946. And they started a business, and then Dad was a policeman here. My brother and I both grew up here, went to school here, then married and raised our children here, and so it's always been home.
When we moved here, it was essentially just farmland. There was really nothing on Tylersville Road from 75 all the way over, and I believe that 71 wasn't even completed at that time, I'm pretty sure. And so there was nothing all the way out Kings Mills Road, and it was a beautiful community for family. Very safe to ride your bike into the downtown. We lived over in the Heights area, and it was just a quiet, sleepy, wonderful piece of Americana. It was really a great community.
My parents moved to Mason in 1934, and my dad was a doctor, and he moved from Cincinnati to Mason with my mother and my oldest brother, my older brother, Frank. He wanted to come out to the country to be a country doctor.
And I remember when I was a kid, and if I was sick, my mom would call the doctor, and he would come to the house and see me, Dr. Batchy. There was one policeman in Mason, Mr. Wright, and rather than fighting crime, he would spend his mornings out here on Main Street helping us small kids cross the street. Because certainly, why not? There was no such thing as crime. So times have changed that way.
It was a very small town, very much like Mayberry when you think of the Andy Griffith Show or whatever. It was just a really friendly place to grow up, and everybody knew you. You went to the grocery store. They knew my mom, and just everywhere you went, you knew everybody. So it was kind of cool to know the business people and that type of thing. We played outside a lot. I mean, we just played. We had woods that were pretty close to us, so we'd go play in the woods and pretend like we were camping or whatever, and just typical things. We had a farm. We had a hill up the street or up the road, and so in the wintertime, we could just walk up the road and go sled. We had our own private sled riding hill. And
well, I had wonderful, wonderful parents. But my biological parents were just one set. When I was growing up, it didn't matter where you were. Any adult was your parent. They acted like your parent.
Yeah.
We respected them like our parents, and
if they didn't, they paid for it.
Yes, we did. So that's probably one of my fondest memories, is just being able to go any place, believe it or not, and having a sense of security, because people were there to take care of you if you needed anything. So.
One thing that we really miss is that when we were growing up here, everybody knew everybody. You know, the population was much, much smaller then, and you couldn't get away with very much as a kid. I mean, we all have stories of, like, you know, if you were out running around and doing something you shouldn't be doing, it wouldn't be very long till so-and-so was calling up your mom and dad and saying, hey, do you know Johnny or Barb is out doing such and such? And it was just nice. Everywhere you went, you knew everybody. You know, everything was so simple, and it was just such a big deal to go to the swimming pool, you know, and hang out at the pool all day or ride your bike. I mean, you would leave the house and your parents wouldn't know where you were all day long, and they didn't worry about you. So it's just the, you know, the old, when Mason was a small farming community, it just was just a wonderful place to be. And it still is now, but it's so different, very, very different.
Well, if you think of Old Mason, you know, downtown Mason, that was our social life. The Whippy Dip was still there to get ice cream, and there were small family businesses, a Western Auto Store, hardware store. Yost Pharmacy was still in existence, or, you know, it was open, maybe a different building. You went to church on Sunday, you went to school during the week, you played in the ball fields in the summer, you rode your bike uptown without worrying about 4 lanes of traffic. I mean, some of those roads were barely 2 lanes and without traffic lights, so you had to be careful, and basically just played with your neighbors and looked forward to sporting events and, you know, summertime.
Bicentennial was such a huge celebration, and I have some memory of that because I was only 5 years old then. But what was really fun about that is everybody dressed up in costumes like the colonial days, and our mothers all made our costumes. So we all had these costumes, and it was just so much fun. Again, it's just the simple things that we enjoyed being here in Mason.
There was a parade every day, which the girls, all the court got to participate, and that was fun, a lot of this. And so we would ride out to the parade in some of the most gorgeous cars. And then throughout the event taking place, we would go to different events. But this was truly one of the grandest things that I think that hit Mason, because it involved the whole community. Not only the contest for the queens and their court, but for the whole town. And people were sewing like mad, making the dresses. The guys were growing beards. There was people being put in jails.
Yes.
I remember such carrying on all summer long with men growing beards and mustaches that otherwise you never saw. And their little get up with their ties and things, trying to be comically from the old days, and a lot of old cars roaming around. In the hometown jail up here, you could pay a few bucks and get whomever you wanted locked up in the jail. So they'd be hanging on to the bars and wanting out and all such stuff. It was a fun time and something that I'll never forget, and people of different ages participated in their own way according to who they were and how old they were.
We dressed our kids up in vests, and I had long sideburns, and we participated in the festivities.
I was 8 years old, and I remember it because it was that everybody get dressed in old-time costumes and go to the parade, and they made a big deal about it. And to an 8-year-old, it was impressive.
It was great fun. At that age, you know, at 16, I don't remember a lot of particulars until somebody else starts talking, and you start remembering what you did.
We were representing our city, and Mason was starting to be recognized, and people liked what we had. And as farmland was sold off and they built houses out here, it was close to the city, Cincinnati, and yet it was still in the country somewhat. And people wanted to come here because they knew what we had here. So It was fun just doing the events every night and just feeling like a princess.
I would say it's like many communities, but I think it's unique in the people that have come here. I mean, not just old Mason people, but new people move to town. They say, gee, this is a neat place. I'll come in. I think that's one of the most important things is we pass it on generation to generation.
We still have that sense of hometown that's still there, not like it was, but yet when I think of Mason, that is what comes back to me. It floods me sometimes to tears because that's my comfort zone of feeling about Mason, because it was home and that safety, that little safety net that I felt about Mason. And that's where my memories lie.
I think Mason has, certainly has a lot to offer. The school system's great. There's a lot of entertainment, readily available. But I think one of the neatest things about Mason is it still has a lot of history to it, and there's still a lot of people that have been here for a long time that remember that history. And so I always enjoy hearing stories of old Mason and hearing what it was like in the day. And our law practice is in an old historic building, and Dad started his law practice there in the late 60s, and so it's just neat to have been in one location for almost 50 years now. And so it's just kind of neat to be part of the chain of history, but it still has a small town feel to it in that there's still a lot of folks that you get to know and that are part of the history and remember that, and that's what's really neat. It has definitely grown quite a bit, and there's a lot of new families and such, but there's still that feeling, even with the growth that we have seen.
There's something about Mason, it attracts people that are like-minded, have the same sense of core values, and they're just family-oriented, faith-based, and love their country, and that's been that way since the beginning of time, and I'm pretty sure it's going to continue that way. There's just something about us.
Mason residents, both past and present, have always taken great pride in their community and valued the history of the city of Mason. So we wanted to bring that into the planning of the Bicentennial.
We actually probably didn't start meeting till, I want to say, 2.5 to 3 years ago. And it wasn't as frequent. As time went on, we started meeting from monthly to weekly. We got a committee of people from the community as well, with volunteers, people who actually wanted to put in their time to help us think of what to do.
We sat down and we looked at it and we said, well, what are we going to do? And it was just a blank piece of paper. And we had about 15, 17 people at the time sitting around, invited everybody. Anybody that wanted to contribute could contribute.
Well, we crafted events that we wanted, that we thought would be unique, individual, that would benefit the city of Mason in diverse ways. We wanted it to be educational. We wanted it to be entertaining. We wanted it to have purpose. We wanted to honor different groups in the community, from those that were in the Bicentennial to different people that had key roles in the community, but we wanted everybody, from those that have lived here their whole lives to those that moved in last week to feel a part.
The opening ceremony was the big splash. It's the big advertisement that we're having a big year this year. We had Jim Scott as our MC. We had the town crier come in, so there was old fashioned. We got to roll out Old Betsy, the fire truck.
We actually tried to get as many as possible of the older residents that have lived here most of their life, and we were able to get them to come, and we recognized them and told a little bit about their background, and that was really fun. And I wish we could have included all of the residents that are still here in the community.
We brought in our veterans and they displayed the flags. We brought in our county, our state, even our governor via video. We wanted it to have a feel of class and importance. We wanted it to be something that someone would remember and say, wow, they put some thought into that. We recognized residents who had been here forever. We recognized veterans, but we also, I think, made everyone in attendance feel welcome and to know, hey, this is the year of the Bicentennial, this is the beginning, and hold on to your hat because this is going to be cool.
200 years. It's quite a milestone. It gives us an opportunity to reflect on the past, and it gives us a chance to ponder about, for the folks after us, what will we be leaving them? Please take the time on this bicentennial of Mason, Ohio, to try to understand how we got here, and we just might have a better idea where we need to go.
It actually started because the Mason community players were involved in the cemetery walk with the Mason Historical Society, and we were bringing to life some of the people that were buried in Rose Hill Cemetery. And one of the members of the Mason Historical Society had kind of mentioned to one of the Mason community players, wouldn't it be a great idea to have a whole play based on the founder's life? And so one of the people that I know did do that was Richard Cox, and he mentioned it to our Mason community player, John Miller. Well, it so happened that John Miller had written plays before. That wouldn't have been the first time he had done that.
At one of the big summer productions, people from the city came up to one of the board members and said, hey, in 2015, in 5 years, we're going to have this big bicentennial celebration. Can something like this be written? And that started the ball rolling.
So he took the kernel of the idea and he started researching the life of William Mason as completely and totally as he could. He laid out a script he actually put in red that which he knew to be fact and then filled in so that the Historical Society could read through it and look at it.
For a good 4 years doing the research, working with all the various facets.
And then John started putting music to it, started developing an entire script with it. He brought in a friend, Stephanie Taylor, who was more accomplished at some composition and some of the lyrics, and they worked together to create unique songs for the play.
As a writer, to tell the story the best way so people can remember it, it is vital, it has worth in the future. By doing a musical and not just a theatrical production, the music you'll remember. So that was the big thing about trying to write the play, that it was interesting, fun, lots of singing and dancing. You know, it's like watching a regular Broadway musical.
It's really the life story of William Mason. It's illustrating how he founded the town and the people that were influential in his life. So it's kind of like a history lesson with music and dancing.
It takes more than 100 people for a production of that size, which we came together in April of this year and put on that production and brought to life William and all the people that surrounded him when he founded this town, which we're just really excited that we were able to do that.
I just hope people remember what we were celebrating on his 200th anniversary, which is William Mason and all he did to found the town. It has a lot of history. Mason has a lot of history, and I just really hope we don't ever forget that.
It's our first community service day, so it's the first time we've put a call out to the entire community to serve on one specific day, and it's our way of celebrating our bicentennial.
Community Service Day to me was the epitome of what Mason is. When we reached out there as a committee to see who would be involved, the response was overwhelming, and that was just such a wonderful thing. Everything about that day became betterment of our surroundings, and the planning that went into it really revolved around that and how to best to do it.
The day we did it was the day that the Kiwanis actually have like their National Service Day. So the Kiwanis sponsored this event, and it was a day to get all kinds of different groups together in one day providing service and giving back to the community. So there was just lots and lots of different groups that were all through the city that day doing some sort of a service project.
It was just such a great feeling in Mason that day.
We just wanted to showcase how generous of a community that we can be and give back.
I hope the dynamics of Mason citizens never change, that their hearts are one of giving. So.
We had guest speakers that we thought would be significant to veterans. And we wanted to have someone speak to each of the veterans' eras. World War I and II, Korea and Vietnam, and then the conflicts since then, we had another speaker. And we were privileged to have a three-star admiral, Admiral Weisskopf, as our keynote. We also had Congressman Brad Wenstrup, who was a colonel in the Army, in the Medical Corps, and Colonel Danny Bupp, retired Marine Corps colonel and a county judge in Brown County. We had scheduled a flyover from the antique warbirds from the museum out in Claremont County. We also had the two parachutists coming in, one to bring in the American flag and one to bring in the POW flag. And of course the weather caused all that to be canceled, and that was very disappointing, yet it didn't ruin the event. It felt like it at first to me, because I was so invested emotionally in the event. Whenever you have an outdoor event, you're at risk, and we were, and we knew it, but we decided we're going to make the decision the day before. We're either going to cancel it and restructure and move it inside, cancel the outside stuff, or we're going to go ahead and just stay the course, and that's what we had to do. And Brad Wenstrup is speaking, and I'm feeling down, because here we are, we're getting rained out. So as I was watching Congressman Wenstrup and the rain dripping off his hat, I looked around at the crowd. They were not leaving. They were sitting there with their umbrellas huddled together. Everybody who was there needed to be there. They were there for a reason, and they weren't going to leave.
And to those who serve, we say, you were what others cared not to be. You went where others feared to go, and you did what others failed to do. And most importantly, you asked nothing from those who gave nothing. May history always reflect on the positive works of our warfighters, who are also our peacekeepers. For without them, we would never know freedom. And for that, we thank you. God bless.
So the rain didn't really hurt us. It prevented the flyovers, prevented the parachutists, but the people that were there to honor the veterans were still there to honor the veterans. I realized I'm in the right place. It was a good day.
We had an architectural plan from the Bicentennial that we went off of. All the things that we had back in the 60s and 70s. We had a Fireman's Festival. We had a Community Unity Day Festival. Sally Wolf Nally, whose great-great-great-grandfather was William Mason, she put together a week-long celebration of all the things that we had back in the 60s and 70s. She took that whole concept and made it Community Unity Week.
Community Unity Days was actually a fun-filled week of different events. Every morning there was a breakfast at, I think, 7:30 that honored a different group within our community. I think there was a pool party out at the outdoor pool, and they had a farmer's market and a craft fair and games. And we had Old Betsy giving rides. Old Betsy's was the first fire truck that the fire department ever had, and they were giving Old Betsy rides and just doing some of the simple things again that we used to like when we were kids.
Then each evening, we transformed that plaza into a little concert base, and we had music going every night. One night we had the traditional Mason Historical Society ice cream social.
We did everything from the old-fashioned build a jail and pay a donation to put your friend in there, to dancing on the streets. We had an extra parade this year. It was all rolled in together. That to me was one of my favorite parts of the Bicentennial.
The original intent for the baseball bash was to, in every way possible, to bring to the community the need for the common ground playground. And we wanted it to, if we could raise funds with league fees, etc., we were going to do that. We wanted the Challenger League and those involved in that community to have an opportunity to enjoy something specifically for the Bicentennial that they could do and not exclude anyone. So that Challenger League, it was a wonderful day.
These are kids that normally would not be able to play a softball game, and volunteers actually helped them get out on the field and play the game, and so they had a little tournament with themselves.
We work closely with the Mason Parks Foundation, who is working on common grounds, and as you know, most of the Bicentennial funds are going to help them build their playground. So they invited us. They wanted to put together a baseball bash, because what's more American in the middle of summer than a baseball game? And they wanted to feature the Challenger League, since their playground is integrated for all children. And our players would be one of those groups that would definitely take advantage of the playground.
For those that attended and those that heard about it, everyone was truly blessed by seeing these children and with the special needs that they have, still saying, I'm here, I'm in the community, and I want to be a part of what's going on in this community. And yes, it's a perfect segue to say these children can go to Mason Parks, but so much of the playground equipment and the things that we have for them, they're difficult or impossible for them to maneuver into, to even enjoy. So we need to do our best to get that common ground park going. And that was the intent of the baseball bash, to raise awareness. It was a daunting task because it was a two-day festival that started off with everything from service groups being able to emphasize what they do for the community. We had tons of food, we had rides. We also had a Mason football game going on at the time, and Mason schools were all over that. At halftime, the Mason marching band had the band play Happy Birthday, and we let balloons go and had a banner going. We had a football drop down to them from a parachutist. I mean, we just incorporated as many people of the community as we could. And then the next day was the parade, and that parade has been a staple for Mason for many, many years. That parade was massive. After the parade, the festival took off again, and the Historical Society had their displays, tons of community service groups had their booths going. We had rides, tons of food, concerts going on throughout the day. And then that evening, we had REO Speedwagon. But before the concert, we brought the children of the board members of Common Ground Playground, the Mason Parks and Recreation Foundation, up to the stage, and we encouraged the crowd to just dig in their pockets right then and there and give. And Mason football team and cheerleaders took up that donation. The weather was perfect, and Mason just had the biggest event we've ever had in the city. It was amazing. The attendance was amazing, and people were so excited. After that, we had a laser light show. After the laser light show, we had almost 35 minutes of the best fireworks I have ever seen in my life, and people walked out saying, Mason's a cool place to live. And they will never forget that this was the year of our bicentennial. That's what we wanted. It took a lot of work to get from a concept to that night. So many people worked so hard to make that happen, but it all worked out.
Cemetery Walk is to promote Mason's history. Learn about the Mayor Louise or Major William Mason. And the past is quite interesting. The stories and the interviews, the past murders, the business people that did quirky things. I mean, there's all kinds of interesting things about Cemetery Walk.
I think it's a great way to introduce the history of the town to the people that live here now that maybe don't even think about it. You know, they live here, their kids go to school here, but they may work in Cincinnati or elsewhere, and so it's nice to, I think it brings people back to where they grew up and their history of, you know, their hometown or whatever. So I think it's nice, it's a good way to find that commonality between the people that have been here forever and the people that are new. So I think, and to know something about your town.
When we began planning this bicentennial, we wanted it to be multifaceted. We didn't just want to celebrate Mason as it is now, and we do want our residents 50 years from now to know how Mason is in 2015. We wanted that. But so much of our history we are losing day by day as that older generation passes on, and we felt that it would have been crime not to bring that with us to the bicentennial. So as best as we can, through the Historical Society and the interviews that we've done and the people that we've engaged, we want them to tell this generation and the generation who's going to open that time capsule up in 50 years, we wanted them to know Mason not just as it is now, but Mason as it was then. That there were things that we will know now that they will never be able to dig back up in 50 years. It'll just be gone. Memories will pass. And if they're not written down and encompassed in our efforts in the time capsule and what the Historical Society is doing, they're not going to be here. So I think we've done a pretty good job of that. The Historical Society has been amazing in helping us to even know the right questions to ask. And the things that they've done regarding history books that they're putting out for the bicentennial and including things in the time capsule that may never have the opportunity to be brought out again. I think we've done a pretty good job of bringing as much of Mason's history as it was then to the sesquicentennial, bringing that together to Mason as it is in 2015.
And I am a student of history, and I believe it's almost like a godsend to people that take the time to study it and see what was done right, what was done wrong, and why. because I do feel if you don't understand how a community got to where it is right now in Mason, then you may not have a full appreciation of where you want to go. And I would hope in 50 years from now, I think I'm probably going to be pushing daisies, I would hope that they keep that sense of community alive. And it is all inclusion, you know, and of all groups, of all people. And they keep that forward, you know. They all want to call it home.
Mason has an amazing mix of people from all backgrounds, and everybody seems to have a place here. It doesn't matter what religion it is, doesn't matter what race, what background, we all seem to come together into an awesome community.
I think overall the people who've added to our population are so caring, down to earth, professional, and people we can be proud of as neighbors.
I just hope that the citizens that are here 50 years from now, you know, still feel the way I feel. I mean, I can't even tell you how much I absolutely love this community. I love the people that live here. I love just what we're all about. I just want to wish all the people 50 years from now that they, you know, have that same feeling in their heart that when they come here, it's a place that they will never want to leave.
Uh, 50 years from now, I think I want them to know a lesson that I learned from my parents, and that is be proud of who you are and where you came from. So I hope when they open that up, they feel a sense of pride knowing that they came from a great community with good, kind people in it.
Hard workers.
Yep, hard workers.
I'm sure that in comparing the bicentennial with the sesquicentennial, that at 250 years, they'll have something very dramatic and lots of things to really celebrate in a big way. And they should. Be proud of Mason. It's an incredible place.
I think that the technology is going to zoom, and things that we cannot even fathom right now will be just everyday common household items and used every day. I think business in Mason is going to flourish, and the community landscape is going to change drastically because of it. But I still think that in 50 years, Mason is going to be Mason. Mason is still going to be the beautiful mid-America city that has something to offer everybody.
I would say take care of our little town.
Yeah, probably.
The people who came before you tried to make it better for you. And
a better place.
Yeah, a better place. And
I think for those that are going to call Mason home and maybe move on, but try to leave it intact. Try to leave it perhaps with your stamp on it in some good way, you know, and I think we should do that no matter where we are. Leave a good legacy behind no matter where you're at.
Right.
So that when someone says, oh yeah, I remember that person, oh yeah, I remember that place, or whatever, because we're not going to be here forever. But leave behind something that will be a contribution to mankind or to somebody in some good way. And I think that's not too much to ask. So I just think that's a good thought to leave on. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to leave behind.
Hopefully in 50 years, Mason is like it was 50 years ago for me. It's a town of giving. It's a town of community. You know your neighbors. You give, you don't take. You learn from your past. You give for your future. Enjoy your life. Don't take it too serious, but don't play too much.
I would want them to know that that they have been handed a very beautiful community with a beautiful heart from a lot of beautiful people, and I expect at that time, I think our Asian community is pushing 20% right now, including Asian, several different countries, India, and I think it's going to be increasingly so in 50 years. I would just say that the foundation of this city is built on love and goodness and serving one another and making the world a better place, lots of different ways. And I would hope that commitment would remain in 50 years, and there would be people there as committed to making Mason a quality place to live as there are right now.
I want them to know how people-oriented we are in Mason and how we cherish that. If you open this time capsule, what you're going to see is the work of a lot of people who banded together, and you're going to just keep seeing people after people after people, how they honored the people who are veterans in the town, how they honored the people who began it in the story of William Mason, how they honored the farmers, how they honored the people who service in our faith communities. And every piece that you pick out of the time capsule, you're going to see how much Mason cares about the people. And so that's what I want you to know. We care about the people, and we're going to keep caring about the people 50 years from now.
I would want them to know that in 2015, Mason was an amazing place to live, to work, to raise a family, to celebrate diversity, to go to church and be with your friends, to grow but still keep the small town feel. I hope in 50 years they can say, Mason is so different in so many ways, but it still feels like home. When we pull in from wherever my husband and I or wherever we're on vacation, we pull into Mason, it's home. It's home not just because we live here, but we love it here. It's our family, it's our roots. We love it. So I'm hoping that, I don't know what the future is going to hold for America, for our state, whatever. I don't know where we're going to be, but I hope that they can feel the same way my husband and I do when we pull into Mason. It's just home. We love it here.
Imagine.
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 Mason.
Imagine Mason.
Imagine.
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 Imagine Mason.
Imagine.
Mason.
Imagine Mason.
Imagine Mason.